boy, do we have a jam-packed bunch of things to talk about today on Bring It In, True Hoops little Zoom from quarantine show. It's Friday with Jarod. We start with the 9x90, and there's Jarod.
Hello, friends.
How's it going, man?
I'm doing well. I feel like I should sound like Jim Nantz. Hello, friends.
Welcome to the Masters.
Okay, so Dan Le Batard is leaving ESPN. It's been in the news the last 24 hours or so. You know, some of it's based around, of course, when his producer was let go by ESPN. He stepped in to pay the salary, etc. And to keep you next, Ron, maybe I will. You know, this is so interesting what's happening in media right now. Matt Iglesias, who started Fox Media, also left his platform. And we know all the mass exoduses that happened at ESPN, some by their own volition, some otherwise. And I know Henry and David can speak to that intimately. I wonder where we're going as ESPN as a network and what actually matters to them. In place of one of their more interesting pieces of programming, which is Le Batard's show, their thought process is more Mike Greenberg. And I don't want to disparage Mike Greenberg just because whatever, who cares? But that's your thought process? Like you want to put 4 more hours or however many hours that slot is of that dude on television? I just don't, when they're sitting around the bosses at ESPN and they're making decisions, whom are they targeting and whom are they talking to? Like who is out there going, yes, me, I want more Mike Greenberg on my television. Look, maybe I live in a bubble and I deal with a small segment of whatever, and the majority of people like that programming. I don't get it. And I just think for a platform like ESPN that used to be really, really excellent, kind of trash now, and it sucks.
I have no thoughts.
I know you do. No thoughts, none.
So President Obama the other day spoke out about the slogan, in his words, of Black Lives Matter. And of course, he got a lot of pushback on his choice of words, I think, and how he characterized that particular movement. And a lot of we have congressmen, Black men and women in Congress. We also have people in the media really challenging him. And I don't want to argue the point that 90 seconds isn't enough time, but I do want to defend the president. This is a Black man with a middle name Hussein in a very, very racist, xenophobic country who won 2 presidential elections. He is an expert at messaging. We should agree on that. We can disagree on politics all we want. And I know this I've had to see a heart doctor before, a few times. When I did, I shut my mouth and I listened to every syllable out of that man's mouth. I actually saw 2 different ones because it's my heart and it's an important thing. President Obama is a brilliant messenger and an intellectual giant. And we should listen to what he has to say, because arguing the point to argue isn't solving the problem. We need wins, and he knows how to win. And so you can debate him at a time, but don't filter what he says. Listen to everything first, just like you do with your heart doctor, and then start asking questions. Don't argue before you really listen. That's all I have to say about that.
Well said, Coach. And I would agree with that point that you made there. Like, he does know how to win, and he knows how to communicate a message effectively. Again, politics, you can argue politics all day, but at that point, inarguable.
We're going to come back to this one, I'm guessing, after the 9x90. Okay, so I have a story about how I'm not super confident that the NBA season is going to happen, particularly because municipalities or states might shut down these size gatherings. The NBA dodged a major bullet yesterday. California Governor Gavin Newsom enacted a new set of shutdowns. He says if we don't act now, our hospital system will be overwhelmed. I'm quoting now. In any region that triggers a regional stay-home order because it drops below 15% ICU capacity, the following sectors must close: indoor and outdoor playgrounds, indoor recreational facilities, hair salons and barbershops, personal care services, museums, zoos, aquariums, movie theaters, wineries, bars, breweries, and distilleries, family entertainment centers. This one's weird. Card rooms and satellite wagering. No information on that. Limited services. What the hell is that? Live audience sports, amusement parks, all closed in counties and regions where they have limited ICU capacity. But there's a little carve out that entertainment production, including professional sports, they will allow operation without live audiences. Additionally, testing protocol and bubbles are highly encouraged. So what I see happening here is California's in full shutdown mode coming up for a bunch of the state. but they're making a little carve out because people just like professional sports. That's a major win for the NBA and the NFL. We'll see if that's how other jurisdictions handle it.
Mm-hmm. So all, year long since I've been on this show, I've talked about the fight continuing. And now that President-elect Biden is in the White House, we need to pay attention to what's going on with his cabinet positions. Jack had a great piece. It's Joe Biden's swamp now. And it is. There is this interesting thing that happens in all industries where, especially the elite and the top of the top, the same 5, 6, 7, 8 names get recycled and pulled through everything, right? You see it in when head coaching jobs come in sports, same thing here. Janet Yellen, new Secretary of Treasury, 2 dudes from BlackRock going to be in his cabinet. I mean, what we're seeing here is the same old thing that I've been warning us against all year long, right? Dudes from BlackRock and Janet Yellen are not going to do anything that's going to help what we've been talking about all year long, which is how do we help the greatest good, the majority of people? You know who they're going to help? You can guess. Shouts to the capitalist machine. Jeff Bezos, all the dudes at BlackRock, Blackstone, all the guys that Henry talks about in his billionaire. These are the people who are getting all the benefits yet again. But we got so excited because, yay, Trump is gone. Okay, 1 piece down, 1 billion more pieces to go. We must keep holding these people to account and say, how are you making this better? How is she making this better? How does this help all of us? Stay woke, people.
Go ahead, Judy. This is what a hero sounds like today.
I will do what I believe is right. And right now we need to save lives. If you don't think that COVID's real, right now you're an idiot. You need to understand that we're all in this together. You cannot fail to understand this. Stay apart. So I'm the guy who has to tell you to stay apart at Christmas and in the holiday season you celebrate with your faith or without your faith, that you celebrate with normally with friends and with family, that where you share memories and build memories. I'm that guy. And I'll say that because it will keep you safe. I'm the guy who's stealing Christmas to keep you safe. Because you need to do this now. You need to do the right thing. Because next year we'll have lots to celebrate. And we'll celebrate this year if we do the right thing this year. You don't need to like me. I hope in years to come you might respect me for having the guts to tell you the right thing. And here's the right thing. Stay safe. Protect each other. Love each other. Care for each other. You got so many ways to show that. But don't get together this Christmas.
Maybe he's added to that.
Who was that, David?
Canadian legislator, I think.
Okay.
Of course, you're not American.
Yeah, there you go. So I did this. Wait, it's my turn, right? I want to go out turn. Yeah, it is. Okay, so I did this little Twitter poll, which is basically who's going to have the best season upcoming out of Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal, and Kyrie Irving. And I think, Judy, if you just vote for one, then we'll see the results. There you go. Let's see if she picks. She picked Kevin Durant, as did most people. Okay, I just did this because after the recent John Wall trade, like the Nets and the Wizards have arguably sort of comparable stars. When we're seeing one is really good and one is not so good. I just want to point out here, though, that like Seth Partnow a while ago in The Athletic interviewed Dr. Joshua Baxter, who's like a world expert on the ankle and the lower foot and Achilles. Couple of quotes. When someone playing basketball cuts their jumps, they might load their Achilles with 8 to 10 times their body weight. So that's like loading your Achilles with 2 grand pianos or half a rhinoceros. That's what Kevin Durant is going to be dealing with. This is not an injury where there's any opportunity for coming out of it stronger or better performing. These elite athletes who might retain most of their function, these athletes are so elite and operate of such thin margins of advantage that even a slight difference in performance might be the difference between playing and not playing. And I just want to remind, we did this story a while back that here we go. In this story, I talked to 2 experts on this who say that basically he has a funny way he moves. He's always had lower extremity injuries, and he moves flat-footed with an externally rotated toe and knees that bend way far forward, all of which speaks probably to, like, not out of time. But anyway, he has to change movement patterns to stop having injuries, most likely. So let's be a little careful Kevin Durant's expectations. That's all I'm saying.
I voted for Bradley Beal, by the way, in that survey.
Thank you, David.
So this is weird thing that kind of happens where history and amazing things sort of happen around us, but like we don't know how to contextualize it in real time, right? Warner Brothers announced yesterday that they're going to be releasing all of the movies that are going into the theaters simultaneously into HBO Max. And I mean, think about that. If I were to tell you 3 years ago, you don't got to go worry about going to the theaters, it's going to come out literally into your app on your phone or on your laptop or whatever the same day it's in theaters. You'd be like, I don't know, maybe it's coming, maybe not, whatever. This is fascinating. Like the idea that we may never have to go back to a movie theater and get popcorn is so bizarre when you think about it. Even if you're not a big movie buff, right? Like the idea of, oh, something's just coming out. I'm going on whatever day, Saturday, to go watch it first show. It's not a thing. I have it on my phone. I got it on my HBO Max. To me, it's incredible that we're living in this time that literally everything for us now is a la carte, right? Like I can just have everything the way I specifically want it and do my own thing and live in my own bubble. I've got thoughts about that, which is not good for the greatest good, but no time for that now. We can discuss this at a later date.
Please make a note of this, Henry. Let's get back to this. I do want to talk about that a little bit too.
Noted.
Thank you, Henry. Okay, so Judy's gonna. I think Henry's gonna do the same thing. We want to bring our viewers some joy with basketball soon enough. With all the death around us, this is highlights of a player known as Steph Curry.
I remember watching this game.
And and this is just a highlight reel of him just bombing shots from everywhere. I've watched basketball, pretty seriously since I was 22, maybe even 21. I've never seen anything like this dude ever in my life. I used to always say, if indeed you could sell your soul, this guy's a candidate that sold his soul because he's making shots so often that just no one ever made. And he's back. He's back and he's healthy and he's excited. He plays with joy, which is why I picked him to show it. It isn't just that he's this great player and we get joy watching him make all these shots. It's his joy on the court. And a friend of mine who's a college basketball coach talks about every day in his practice, he tries to make sure the players find joy in a particular drill to start practice. It's supposed to be fun. And he exhibits that beautifully. The game is supposed to be joyful. We're supposed to get joy watching it. They're supposed to feel joy playing it. And I think he is the best guy at that. Like Luka's competitive as hell and obviously finds joy in being competitive. This dude just exudes joy and you can't watch him and not feel it. So we're going to be watching it soon enough. And I'm very joyful about that.
A+ on the joy. I couldn't contain myself. Dave was talking and I'm like, oh my God.
It's totally the best. Watching him make those shots is just the best.
All right. So there's this fun little video. Look at this. Look where he's standing. It's just on a loop.
Half court.
One, who cares? But it just, as the video goes, he just keeps doing it. He did a podcast interview with CJ McCollum's podcast. He talked about his trainer, Phil Beckner, and how they routinely practice this. It's not just shooting from there; it's strength to shoot from there, and pound dribble from there, and on and on. And he said that, Terry Stotts might not be ready for it, but he's fully just going to start shooting from there in games. I hope so, and I hope so not just because it's fun to see them go in. I hope so because the NBA is not very popular. It's not popular enough. Not enough kids are watching it. Games aren't exciting enough. Like I'm telling you, this is the solution. A, because everybody who sees this just has to love it, right? But B, because defenses are just ruined. And that's also good for the game, right? Like, I don't know what the hell you do about this. Like,
you have to guard him. You have to guard him.
You got to guard him. And then someone's getting a dunk. Like, he can drive this man. He can drive. He can put the ball on the floor. So I just feel like if the NBA game is just going to expand and expand, it's a pretty good solution to most of what ails it. And this is what it looks like. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, well, that's why it wrecks defenses, Henry, is because you have to guard him from way out there, and he can dribble by you, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I have a question, and one is for both of you. So this one's for Coach first. Obviously, technique matters, duh. How much strength is required to shoot a ball from that far away?
Are we speaking for basketball players or middle-aged men like myself? Because I can't reach the rim anymore. I don't even try. But we do the same thing that his coach does. I don't necessarily do half-court shots, but and I would say at least once a week we'll have our guys shoot 35 footers or so with the exact same form they normally do. We try to get them to lower their hips a little bit more and get more energy from their legs into the shot. But if for them it's nothing. It's just easy for them. But yeah, I can't do it. Hard.
Henry mentioned that this is what cures what ails the NBA, because it's not a popular game. And it's so weird, right? Because we're simultaneously good people to talk about this, but also the worst people to talk about this, because we're in it. So we're
in no matter what.
Yeah. So we're watching. That doesn't matter. But do you think it's about that the long range shooting appeals to it makes it look as though an average person can do it because it doesn't require super height and all that, which is why I like watching big men dominate is not as exciting, because I'm not 7 feet tall. I can't relate to that. But a 6 foot dude who's maybe more like 5'11", I can relate to that. He's more my size. You think there's a part of it there?
Yeah. So like, a couple of data points there. Big men usually don't sell shoes, right? Because you can't picture yourself being that. You can't picture being Shaquille O'Neal. You can't picture yourself being Kobe because he's more body type like us, right? I think that's part of it. I think I'm very moved by after that first shot when Steph had the game winner in Oklahoma City, school kids all over the country shot threes the next day. So that's 100% perfect proof that it lit hearts on fire in young people. That's important for the game. People playing basketball when they're young is a good predictor of the NBA audience 10 years later. So right now people aren't playing it. So that's a terrible piece of news. But I think you want people to play it. So this lets people play it. I also think that shorter term, there's just like if like Corey Brewer is a friend of the show, he does a lot of things on defense that are absolutely brilliant, and he's long and athletic and super high effort. And it's very hard for someone in a sports bar who's a football fan to appreciate that. They won't even notice. They won't even know he was on the court, right? But this is a play where everybody puts their beer down and was like, what the fuck just happened, right? Like it's just you don't have to understand anything to appreciate it. And I think that's the real thing, is that's a night that not only does the NBA lead SportsCenter, but SportsCenter leads the ratings, right? Like those two things happen when Steph does that. So I think it's just like a easily appreciable bit of Michael Jordan style, like magic, right? Where you're just
I think I saw that firsthand. I'm sure I did. So I started coaching high school in '87. That was the first year the 3-point shot was allowed in national high schools. It was a rule. And I worked 10 weeks of camp every summer, every year. I was dating my wife, then my girlfriend. She was in college still. I didn't see her for 10 weeks, more or less, except for some weekends. And you would get to the camp the first day, and kids would be shooting and dribbling, hundreds of them on a court. And then in summer of 91, summer of 90, I think Rick Pitino had just finished his first year of coaching at Kentucky. And they were recruiting one of my players. I went to go work Coach Pitino's camp. Tubby Smith was there. Billy Donovan was a grad assistant. I mean, amazing coaches everywhere. Herb Sendek was the associate coach. And Kentucky this is the University of Kentucky. Hundreds of kids are on the outdoor courts outside Memorial Coliseum. They're all chucking threes. I had never seen that before. Yeah, at the gas station where we gassed up outside Lexington, there were like Rex Chapman jerseys, of course, but Rick Pitino like basketball cards. And they weren't even any good. Now, the next year, they lost to Duke, in that Christian Laettner shot, but this is before then. But the 3-point shot had captured the state's imagination. And I witnessed it firsthand, was really amazed. And I never fought the idea of, you can't shoot threes, it's part of the game. You get an extra point. Why not practice that, And it brings joy. It's fun. It's hard to do too, by the way, not for these guys. Yeah, it's hard for us, for the average human. It's just not easy to make those shots. They're special.
It's a big deal. It's a big. There's something about, like, if you give a baby a ball, like a toddler, like there's a deep. Humans don't need to understand the game of basketball to just understand that thing goes in the hoop, right? So like, shooting is like a very natural thing to us, right? or appreciating it. All right, there's so much to talk about. Does anybody want to? We have so many topics here. Does anybody want to nominate what we should go next?
I want to hear Jarod talk about the conflict Obama's always dealt with as a black man who's been our president. It's hard to please everyone. I want to hear your thoughts, Jarod. I thought of you right away when I saw him speak, and I said, "Okay, here we go. He's going to get hammered."
Yeah,
and he was. And this is Obama. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a challenge. And look, the hard thing about being Barack Obama is that when he became president, as a black person, your initial first reaction is finally someone who is here for us, right? Because hundreds of years of history, there has been no one here for us. But he is president of the United States. So he isn't just president for us, he has to be president for all the people, right? And that is a hard thing to reconcile emotionally when you're looking at this, number one. Number two, your point about him being an expert at messaging and winning and et cetera, that's also fundamentally to the core of who he is as a person, right? Like, you want to get into the politics, he's a centrist moderate. Like, that's that moderate. That's who he is politically. Look at everything he's passed and tried to do. He's not a progressive, right? So that is the challenge when you are black and you need more progressive things to happen. Those things come into direct conflict because he's not quite that. The third piece, of course, is also the racial component, right? And ultimately, when you talk about race in America, it's, everyone calls it the third rail, it's explosive, right? How he's effective at saying and talking about things that have to do with race without offending white people. And that sometimes and oftentimes aggravates and rubs black people the wrong way, right? It's like, we don't give a shit about your feelings sometimes. Fuck it. Yeah, it's uncomfortable because being us is uncomfortable and sucks a lot. Like, you have to deal with this too. So I think that's often where you get that pushback from, right? Where it's like, we don't want to hear what he has to say because he didn't do enough for us, etc. I did appreciate his point about AOC in that, because he's also to relate it to basketball, he is like Adam Silver in that, let's build consensus. Let's get everybody together, right? There are certain people who that is their modus operandi to get things done. David Stern, no, bully. This is what we're doing. Shut up, get it done. No, Barack, that's not. Everybody come to the table. There are merits to both sides of that argument, right? You can see sometimes you need the hammer and other times you need come on, as Coach would say, breathe in spirit and bringing people in. It's a difficult thing. It's a job. I mean, I wouldn't want that. It's a job. I wouldn't know when to use it and when not to do it. And knowing myself now, the angrier I get, the more hammer I'm bringing, right? Like, just because I can't with you people anymore. So it's tough. It's really difficult.
Wait, did you guys see the video that was like now we're going back to regular racism?
No. It's funny.
Like, that's the question. That's what we're saying, basically. In some ways, it would be a giant win for America to go back to regular racism. In some ways, we got a giant multi-year-long show of how unbelievably racist America is.
Right.
And we're really not going to go fix that in an aggressive way. We're really going to be like, no, we'll just patch it up. I know it's yeah. I feel exactly like you do. This is an Adam Silver thing where it's like consensus building works if the constituents are close enough to honest, truthful, seeking things that work for everybody, then you can build consensus. But if mostly the people in the back room don't want what's okay for everybody, then you can't build consensus with them. Also, I would say that both Adam Silver and Barack Obama both need to align big, powerful, wealthy forces, right? That's not always possible. Yeah.
I would just argue one thing. I don't know what Obama's politics are. I just think he's a winner. And so maybe you're right, Jarod. Maybe he is a more of a centrist and a moderate, right? Maybe. I really have no idea. He can't win it as a progressive. He wouldn't be President Obama. He'd be State Senator Barack Obama. Correct. Okay. And so I as a human being living in this country who valued him and didn't agree with everything he did, when would we ever do that? Ever? We needed him as president. We need more people like him. We need wins. As the coach, we need wins. So there's the time for development. There's a time to win. You can do both. When it's time to win, let's get wins and let's keep winning.
Here's the thing though, we've been operating with massive surplus. When you have a surplus, you get to fuck everything up. You can do stupid things every day and win. So like, so basically we're a country that believes that we don't have to listen to the coronavirus because we can just win. It's like, well, you feel this way and you feel that way, so let's not really wear masks, right? It's like, that's fucking wrong, right? Like you can't build consensus to people who don't think the coronavirus is real. Like you need to shove it down their throats, right? Like with stiffly enforced policies, or people are gonna die. So like, are we up against? So Obama was from the pre-Trump America, where there were 50 different right answers because we had enough money to pay for screwing things up. Like we spent that money now, right? Like and that goodwill and everything. So now it's like, now we have to get it right. The policies have to be good. Right? We have to not destroy the planet. We have to, we have to solve COVID-19 and BLM, right? We might not be able to build consensus to policies that will actually solve those problems. There might not be a popular answer. You might not win on election day with the policies that will work. So then what do we do, right? Now it's time for Jarod's hammer, right? Like now someone's going to have to make it happen because we can't just consensus our way to carbon emissions.
I think you can hammer the consensus too. Don't get me wrong. I think you can. I mean, I like what this, what the Canadian government official said. In a way, that was a hammer. It was an empathetic hammer, but it was, you're an idiot. I saw you react, Henry, when he said it. I did too.
Yeah.
I've been saying this all the time. I'm not a politician. Like, you're just a fucking idiot at this point. If you see the pain and anguish going through our healthcare workers, forget about all the people mourning or just sick. Who wants to spend time in a hospital ever? Not because it's the holidays, ever. Who wants pneumonia ever? And yet we're dealing with all this. So we have to speak harshly sometimes.
So this is December, right? Like, where was this shit in March? That's when it really would have been useful, right?
Yeah.
Like, so nothing really has changed in what we know. So I do think that like going forward, there's a political problem, which Adam Silver feels too, which is the data has hard lessons. And the question is, can you bring people along with them and how quickly? So in America, on the globe, we're basically saying, not the whole globe, we're saying
pretty close though.
Once everybody knows somebody who died, like maybe we can have the mild inconvenience of masks. Right? Before then, no. Right?
Yeah. Fox News is actually, I just saw something the other day on their morning show. You see it where, hey, masks are working in Kansas. Right. My wife and I are like, oh, what are we doing? What are we doing here? What is going on?
Like we know, like I know the NBA knows how the schedule causes injuries. But they just can't get it done. They just can't get the changes through. Right? Yeah. Like it's just not popular enough. So they just don't do it. Right? Like this is the modern political dilemma is like, are you going to do what's popular or are you going to do what the data says has to be done? And like, that's where I think the modern political dilemma is a little different than the Obama time.
See, Henry, you're right on, right? The data isn't popular. And and you know who probably helped that? Freaking what's his face? Coach Fizdale with his take that for data when he's throwing at the table, right? We got people railing against things that no, we know what works. Here, we don't have to study this shit anymore. Everything that explains the wealth gap, we have 1 billion pages on this. Here, just do this. We don't really want to do that. That doesn't really
and speaking of the NBA and data and scheduling, it's a condensed schedule. We're not just in a pandemic. It's a raging pandemic. We're going to have injuries because of basketball. We're going to have sickness because of COVID. And I think we're going to find out today there might not be a G League again. Like, we're back on that. And I don't know who, because they're afraid to spend, as I told Jarod, I think they're afraid to spend $500,000 when each team should be giving $5 million, which is chump change for them to develop all this pool of talent that they have. That also is going to be replacing the guys injured from the schedule that you have and COVID. And I think they're just going to say no. Because I don't. That's all I have to say.
I'm not. This is not a joke at all. If I had several $1 billion, let's make it. Let's go big.
Like 50,
100, whatever the number needs to be.
How about seriously? How about 740 billion, which is our military budget?
Okay, if I had $740 billion,
the world, you are the capitalist machine. You are now the front man.
Yeah, go ahead, Henry. Go ahead. What would you do?
I know they've done a lot of like the Wubble was at IMG which is not so far from where David
Yeah.
lives in Florida, right?
Yeah.
If they don't have a G League, I would, and I know there have been other programs that have happened on the IMG campus in a bubble format that have worked, right? Either at IMG or somewhere like it. I would just make David Thorpe in charge of all the people who were going to be in the G League who want to go work under David Thorpe. Give them a big budget, give them a nice bubble, give them a staff, and have them just freaking develop talent.
They'll get better.
And then, like, no one's going to regret that. And it's not going to be that expensive. How much would you charge, David? What's the cost? How much is it going to cost me?
Well, anything with the B is fine. Right. If you want pennies, ask for pennies. If you want dollars, ask for dollars. I think there's just a college tournament that played in a bubble in the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it was a full bubble or not, but it's nonsensical to think that these teams are who someone is paying, and we know the Milwaukee Bucks, Nick Stauskas, more than $5 to try to win basketball games. Okay. And yet you won't pony up half of that or whatever they're paying them to be able to evaluate all these players and develop them and see who can fit in your system down the road for cheap. That's the other thing is it doesn't cost much to develop them. And then it doesn't cost much to employ them. Right. Duncan Robinson made league minimum. Okay. Come on, people. What are we doing here? But we're doing what we always do. They just don't understand what they're looking at.
Yeah. Well, I think also, David, in fairness, like I think to you who knows player development really well, you can see the value, right? You can see 2 years ago Duncan Robinson and say there's a finals contributing player there, right? Like I think that's very rare even in the league. So I think they don't see the value because they don't see the value. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they don't. No, but they should. They don't value it. Period. I had an agent say to me one time, a very, very famous agent became a GM of a team, and he watched me work a player out of his for 1 hour. I never met the player before. Well, I had met him, but when he was a high school kid, and we were doing things from three. The kid could never shoot before, and I tweaked a couple things, and we got in the elevator. We were at a gym upstairs. We got in the elevator, come down, and he said, "I didn't know you could do that." And I said, "Well, yeah, you're an attorney. Like, what do you know?" But this is what I did is not magic. This is what coaches do. Just like in baseball, you take a pitcher who didn't have a curveball. All these pitchers didn't have every pitch you see when they first started pitching. They were taught those things. This is the game. And I don't think they value that aspect enough. And eventually they will, I'm hoping. I used to be, years ago, before I even knew Henry, I said every team's going to have an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and a shooting specialist. Well, I wasn't right. Every team's got 5 shooting coaches now. And most of them aren't any good. They don't really know what they're doing. They played the game. Here's what gets me all the time is you hire players to do it. I'm not looking for a job anymore, but this is not, I've turned down many jobs. I don't want to work in the NBA. But when you hire players who've only worried about their own shot and ask them to now teach everyone else on your team, something's wrong with that. Coaches are thinking big picture. But eventually we're going to have really good development people, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. These are specialists. The world is all about specialists, right? Why wouldn't basketball be?
I'm with you on that.
Can we talk about the Rockets for a second?
Yeah.
I'm super fascinated by this. Okay, so the Rockets now are James Harden, Christian Wood, John Wall, PJ Tucker, Eric Gordon, DeMarcus Cousins, Daniel House, Jerian Grant. There we go. DeMarre Carroll. Did I say that already?
Yeah.
What do you make of this team?
Well,
I'm waiting, Jarod. I'm letting you speak first.
honestly, I don't know. That's it. Let's put it this way. No secrets being broken here. That team ain't winning no title. I know that much. I know that much.
I think that if you let's agree that people who go to car races are going for the beauty of the speed and the sound. I think I don't go to any car races. You could probably guess that. But I also think they're expecting wrecks.
Oh, okay? No.
This is the NBA's the NBA's version of
this is the story we're telling.
Yeah. This is and here's why. If James Harden came out today and said, "You know what? These people have paid me so much money. My fans have been amazing here. We got so close. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm not going anywhere." I actually think they could be a decent team. I don't think you guys are wrong at all.
They're not mailing it in. Like,
no,
they're not mailing it in.
No,
like, this is not a tanking team. Like,
no, that's what I'm saying. But James Harden's not going to do that.
Right.
And so, and John Wall is off the reservation. I've been a huge John Wall fan for a long time. He was when the NBA started bringing in the world's best athletes at that position, Derrick Rose, Westbrook, Wall, he was the best passer of all the elite athletes in the NBA at point guard. But he has not been what he could have been. And now he's been out for 2 years and he may look fine. Let's see when you start getting to the grind of the season. They'd be all right if Harden devoted himself. He won't. So it's going to be a crash and burn, I think.
I'm going to read a little John Hollinger. He said that the Wall deal, quote, cements a bad asset cascade on Houston's end. If you're keeping score at home, that means in the span of one season, the Rockets surrendered a future first and 2 pick swaps to turn Chris Paul into John Wall, who was a worse and more injured player with a longer contract. Yuck. And then he has one other key point, which is it's not like the Rockets are done hollowing out their core to avoid the luxury tax either. Right. So I think Eric Gordon is the big deal that is movable. And then also in the Houston Chronicle today is a story with a big picture of Rafael Stone saying that the Rockets are still big game hunters, which to me sounds like the kind of thing you say if you need Tillman Fertitta to feel like you're really kicking ass. I don't know. But
I have a question for Henry.
Okay.
Jarod, I want your opinion too, but you'll see why I'm asking Henry first. So 2 years ago, I tweeted and I also said to you, John Wall, Bradley Beal as a partnership is not a duo that's really working great. At this point, John Wall hadn't been hurt yet.
Yeah.
And I suggested they do a Beal to Portland for CJ McCollum and a first round pick.
I do remember this. Yeah.
Do you go? So now, how would you feel about that as a Blazers fan? And then Jarod, take the Wizards side of things. If 2 years ago you would have got CJ and a first round pick, and the Blazers get Bradley Beal, it's separate from you can say it. Lillard and CJ are close. I know that.
Can I ask a follow-up question before I answer? In the intervening 2 years, did we win a championship?
That's really the only way you're gonna value whether how.
No, but if we did, it would affect things. I don't know.
Would your chances be better?
It's a tough one.
It is tough. CJ's very good, and they're amazing friends, and there's value to that.
Yeah,
Beal's better.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think Beal's better.
Yeah, and look, let's be honest. The Blazers are gonna make some kind of win now, high risk moves now moving forward. You probably would have been better to do that 2 years before and give yourself
right. And so on the Wizards side, what is Beal going to get? Maybe more than CJ and a pick. I don't think so though. That's really what I'm wondering is where are they? And Ernie Grunthal was the GM when I first proposed this. Beal's going to get a lot for sure, but CJ is a borderline all-star and an amazing a wine connoisseur, great for your culture, and a first-round pick too. I don't know they're going to beat that when they deal him, because I think they'll deal him.
Your 3 points include wine connoisseur.
That's actually, that's the challenge with anytime you're trading a star-level player, right? Is you're never quite getting back equal value, and I think Beal. CJ and a first round pick is about as best as you can do. The challenge, though, if I'm Washington, right? Okay, a first round pick when? Because if you have Beal and Dame, you're in the playoffs every year. So that's not a lottery pick. That's a late first round. What? Okay, what am I going to do with that? Who am I picking at the back half of the first round? But I do, from the Portland standpoint, love it, because my issue with the Blazers always has been I love Dame and CJ. But when your 2 best guys are under 6'3", I don't love that.
It comes with a tax. Yeah, it comes with a defensive tax for sure. And by the way, the Wizards now, Russell Westbrook, I think, did he make third team All-NBA last year?
He did.
Mm-hmm. So it's not like he stinks. Okay, he's a problem. Denny Avdija is ready to win games pretty close to now. There'll be some adjustment, not a huge adjustment. In fact, one of the adjustments is going to be, well, these fucking guys aren't as smart as the guys that he's playing in the EuroLeague with, because those old there's no young guys playing in the EuroLeague. Denny's one of the few. They're just a bunch of grizzled veterans. Our league has a bunch of really, really smart players and a bunch of young guys who don't know how to play yet. So Denny's going to be just fine. And now if they don't trade Beal right away, now they're going to be a horrendous defensive team. I mean, horrendous defensive team. Their starting 5, Thomas Bryant is Mo Spates. So brilliant offensive talent. He really is. He's got a real feel for offense and shooting, scoring, get buckets. Can't guard anyone. Rui Hachimura is not an NBA level player yet right now on either end of the court. Denny's going to take some time as a rookie defensively. And then you've got Beal, who graded out, I think, is the worst defensive player in the league last year among shooting guards. In my opinion, because he just didn't bother trying. I don't think you'll see that this year. He's a good defensive player. Westbrook doesn't care about defense typically. So it's going to be, they're going to score a lot of points. Jarod, put them on your league pass. Yeah, put them with Portland and Phoenix. The Wizards are going to be fun to watch, man. They are.
Or whoever they're playing against, I guess.
Yeah.
This is what you do on League Pass, right? It's like you watch all the games that aren't the national games. It's like, oh, yeah, you'll see all those teams. But yeah, I'm going to be watching the Wizards. What are they going to be doing? Look, they're going to compete for a playoff spot, obviously, right? Because as much as Westbrook isn't my favorite player, not because I just ultimately, if your whole goal is to like, how are we going to win this whole thing? I think he creates some problems for you. But he's very good at basketball. He's excellent. Him and Bradley Beal alone, that's pretty freaking good as a backcourt, right? And the one thing you can never say about Westbrook is he'll compete his ass off. So they're going to play hard, and he's going to try to win every game as much as possible. So they're going to be entertaining. And I think GM Tommy Shepard, friend of the show, he's probably happy with that, right? Oh, we got guys that want to compete and will play hard. That's a step in the right direction for us.
And that's, that little survey I did, like, Westbrook might, depending, I intentionally made it best, like who's going to be the best this year, which is up to your interpretation. But if it's some kind of box score based thing, I think Westbrook's going to win that, right? Like he's playing for Scott Brooks, who doesn't have a track record of really reining him in, right? Like Westbrook's going to be an absolute, and he specifically said he wanted to be like play his game and do it. Bradley Beal's going to hate that, but Westbrook's not going to hate that. Like that's going to be he's going to put on a show, right? He's got some stuff to prove. People have maligned him, right? Like, yeah. And he is.
And I don't know if they can trade him again. You can't trade him for Chris Paul. You can't trade him back for John Wall. There's not a lot of players that you can trade him for.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to be there a bit, which is why I think they may keep Beal, is just because they'll be a playoff contender. And I think that maybe they need to make the playoffs for time to keep his job, for Scottie to keep his job, just like with the Hawks. You could see with the moves they've made, they're clearly trying to make the playoffs this year.
Player-coach relationship. You talked about Russ and Scottie. Henry, something I direct message to you that I want to talk about. And I know, Coach, you saw this. So Paul George was on Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson's All the Smoke podcast.
I didn't see this. Okay.
He talked about, what went to get down in Clipperland. They lost a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets and all that. And one of the things he said was, we're up 3-1. He's like, all right, we're up 3-1. We'll win the next game. We're up 3, we lost. Okay, we're up 3-2. We'll win the next game. All right, we're 3-3. Okay, now it's game 7. Okay, they lose. And one of the things he said was, I was looking and waiting for Doc to make some adjustments and do something different. And he was like, he had me playing like Ray Allen or JJ Redick, and I need more variation, pick and rolls, post-ups, etc. And the other interesting piece of this was that Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer went through advanced stats, which is a wonderful thing that we have access to right now, and pulled up the numbers of possessions that Paul George had last season. 33% of the time he's involved in pick and roll, the highest in his career. So Doc did have you doing different things. You just weren't very good. But what I wanted to talk about was that statement he made was so layered, right? One, where was the accountability from his part, right? For I wasn't good. Part number one. Part number two, sure. And Coach, you can get into this. Doc could have certainly made some adjustments and done some things differently. 100%. The third thing, though, look, you were still up 3-1, 3-2, 3-3, and you had double-digit leads in the second half of all those games, yet y'all found a way to lose. Can't all be about you were just doing JJ Redick and Ray Allen things. A lot of things go into how that broke down.
I was wrong. I did see this. I just didn't realize it was with Matt Barnes. But I read all these comments. It's funny. I have friends who work in Hollywood, and they are always taken with people who have made it there and are still kind of the same people. It's hard. And I feel for Paul George. I don't know Paul George's story all that much. I know some things. But I would bet the high school version of Paul George didn't blame everyone else for his failures. It's really hard to make the NBA. And you have to have some degree of self-analysis to what you're doing and goal setting. And he did it. It's amazing what Paul George has done. And I think fame and fortune or whatever has affected him, because it's ludicrous to you can have conversations about what didn't happen outside of your own game, but you should always preface it as a decent person with, clearly I didn't play very well. And I really, coaches were sensitive to what you mentioned, Jarod, when he said, I need to get the ball more and do my pick and roll. That, when we have to start orienting around you, like, where's the problem? But Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, the drummer doesn't have to say to the guitar guy, hey, I need a little more drum solo. Dude, it's Bruce Springsteen's band, okay? Player will find someone else to play your instrument, all right? Paul, you're not the best player on the team. You get plenty of touches. You've got to find your groove within the groove of everybody else and not make it just about you. LeBron James led the league in assists last year, okay? He didn't have to find his game for his scoring. He took care of everybody else, and they won a championship. It's not rocket science here.
And remember, was it just Wednesday we were talking about Javon Buha's article about how basically the Clippers lack leadership, right? So exactly who deserves which blame and Doc this and Kawhi that, like, we weren't there. I wouldn't care to weigh in. But it seems inarguable that that was a team that had a leadership crisis, right? A leadership vacuum. That's why they lost, right? And so Paul George is probably right with every single thing that they didn't do right, as is everyone else, right? Like, all those things went terribly because they weren't a well-led team. And that's hard to talk about when you're part of it and you put so much work into it. But I don't think that it's likely to be this as simple as, any one person's version of it, right? The fact is, like, he was one of the people who's kind of supposed to be a leader. He reminds me a little bit of Philadelphia Andre Iguodala. Like, Philadelphia Andre Iguodala was a very stressed out dude. He was supposed to be the next AI, and that's not really his forte, right?
Not even close.
But Golden State Andre Iguodala was fantastic, right?
Yeah.
And he was definitely not the leader of that team. He was a vocal guy, but he was not Steph. And so to me, like, Paul George is maybe a little, maybe he can be super, super valuable to a championship team with coming nowhere near the steering wheel, right? That's fine.
Wasn't Kawhi credited as, in that article, Jarod, as doing more leadership things?
So they said second half of the season that Kawhi started to do a little bit more of the bringing everybody in and working out together. And then when the league shut down, he would work out with Pat Bev and those guys together in LA, and they'd come down to San Diego and do various things to sort of get that together. And part of this is what we talked about on Wednesday, right? Which is that type of direct go-to, let me get everybody together. That's not Kawhi's like style. Like, if we forget about basketball, if we were all hanging out in a room, we went somewhere, Kawhi isn't the one to say, hey, that's not him. Like, he isn't that dude. And so, but we do this thing in basketball where the best player has to be that guy. And it's like, yeah, but if that ain't his skill set, we got problems. As you know, Kyle Lowry was leader of the Toronto Raptors. That's why that works. Right. Kawhi could be the best player, but Kyle's like, no, we need this, whatever. And Kawhi will, because Kawhi's not a bad guy. He will fall in line and do whatever Kyle says. But he's not going to lead and say, guys, here's what we got to do here, and here. Right.
No, it's a nuanced point, Jarod. That's very good. Y'all remember the football player named Vince Young? Mm-hmm. He led, it's considered one of the greatest college football games ever, where Texas beat USC to win a championship. And but the year before, when they got, I don't remember when they lost. I don't really care about college football or Texas football, but the story is great. They lost. They got upset, whatever it was in the last game. The next morning, he posted a handwritten note, like in their locker room. Anyone that wants to win a national championship a year from today, meet me here the rest of the year at 6 a.m. or all off season at 6 a.m. And I just thought, but I heard that story, I'm like, ooh, I got something there. Like, he was their best player. And so when I've talked to students of mine, when they're the best player on their team, I always tell them the Vince Young story. I don't care what you do, but you're the best player. You want to be the best leader? Lead. You want to get good at leading? Practice leading, right? Get them all together in whatever. I think Jarod's point about Kawhi is spot on, but you can change, right? And they had success. They won 7 of 8. Only the Lakers beat them before the break. Let's see. And I think Ty will help that. I think he'll help that too. But Paul needs to come to terms with some things, or maybe he gets traded. He still has value in the league.
Yeah.
But you need to look inward, man. It's just, if you know you screwed up as a dad, you just blame your kids for everything. You suck as a dad. Like, look inward first.
Wait,
I think that's interesting, Henry, and Coach. In the NBA, contracts in many ways dictate your perception, right? How good you are and who you are supposed to be, right? Paul George has a max deal, so people think he's that guy. But in Jovan's article, Montrez and Pat Bev and Lou Will were like, who the hell is this dude? Like, talking to what, like, if Kawhi did it, they'd be cool with it because, well, yeah, Kawhi's rating finals MVP. He's done it. He's got the accolades that we believe that, right? The way in which players know and can sort of sense bullshit, for lack of a better word, from their peers, right? Oh, if LeBron tells me, yeah, I'm rocking with that dude because he's got the stuff to prove it. You, what have you done? Like, why are you telling me and acting like you're the best guy? So I can see how that would obviously, and it did create much consternation and issues internally.
Yeah.
well, they like Derek Fisher never went to Kobe Bryant's house, right? Kobe Bryant never hosted a dinner. Like his people never came over, right? He won plenty, right? He did fine. You don't have to be host dinner guy.
Right.
In San Antonio, they solved that because Greg Popovich hosts all the dinners, right? I think the problem with the Clippers wasn't that Kawhi didn't do that, right? It was that nobody did, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's okay to be the like B, C, D option on some of these things, right? Like if some other Laker wanted to lead the team in assists, they'd be like, what the hell? Why you gotta take this from LeBron? He's doing that, right? Like I think there's actually a lot of value in being the second, third supportive person on some agenda that your team has, right?
I think the talent to be a follower is very, very underrated. I might even write about this at some point. It's part of being a good leader. Right. Is you have to be that follower. But if you're always the alpha in a sense, you're not really.
Right.
And you're not, and people aren't going to be buying you the same. And I like how Jarod just put it with Pat Bev. Pat Bev could be a great leader because nobody will fuck with him. but that isn't his best talent either. He's had to survive in a way that almost no one's ever had to go through. He's more worried about Pat Bev. And he's also the littlest dude in the league, more or less, right? It's hard enough to survive in that league, okay? It's to ask him to take care of everyone else is a step too much. Lowry is super special. We know that now. Like, you just don't find Kyle Lowry's very often. Littlest guy out there and worst athlete? Come on. Tell me he's going to be the leader of the NBA team? But he is. He's just a very special guy that way.
Is there something sort of like goes against your instincts, Henry, when you're looking at how teams figure out the leadership void and vacuum? Best player, you must be leader. Are the guys like who, again, the number 4 guy who's probably better to do it? Is he like weird in his mind? He's like, well, I can't because I'm not 1. I'm only 4 on the call sheet. Is that like this weird thing that happens in there?
It stresses me out. It does. Like I just think there are 1,000 skills, 5,000 skills in somebody's really good at getting everyone to the bus on time. Like somebody's really good at noticing where Kyle Korver likes to catch it. And it's like you want as many people to be doing the things that they're really good at, right? So, the notion that Kobe's gonna host the big dinner is like, that's just, why would anyone even suggest it? It's just not happening, right? It's really stupid. So to me, like, yeah, let's try to think. There are some teams, and now we're testing my 46-year-old pandemic memory, but there have been teams where like the real emotional leader was not the best player.
Oh yeah.
Can you think of some examples while I struggle?
In the NBA or just in general? Because I have a great one in general.
Okay, go for it.
I just witnessed it the other day. So Florida State played their first game.
Yeah.
Everyone, I asked my son this afterwards. They're spread all over the damn place. Like you're not around the coaches. And so there's a walk-on the team. He's a redshirt senior. He's an advanced mathematics major, but he's going to get into coaching and management. He could have played lower level D1, and like my son, wanted instead to be in a much bigger pool, right? So he's at Florida State, one of the best teams in the country. And he, according to my son and the coaches, he is the toughest guy in practice. I've been at practice, and he was joyful, but they said, no, he gets on your ass more than anyone. And he's a walk-on, and he's the littlest guy on the team, 6'2", okay? And so all these seats are assigned seats. This guy sat in between the head coach and the associate head coach. That ain't an accident, right? He was there for a reason because he is on their ass too. Now, he's a good player. He ain't the best player. He's a walk-on, and he's the smallest dude. But he sat there, and I know exactly why the coaches put him there because he is doing his job too. And in practice, and I said to my wife this, we went to practice last March when we visited, you hear his name more than anyone else's name from other players' mouths. He was running the show, and they had 2 lottery picks on their team. And the team captain signed a 2-way deal with the Jazz. So 3 NBA players, and this dude's name, Justin, you hear it everywhere. Justin. Like, that's when a culture is working.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't have to be your best player. He needs to be a hard worker, and he needs to be selfless, right? Aren't they their best leaders anyway?
Yeah.
That's why we have such a terrible leader now, is the opposite of selfless, which why he's the opposite of being a leader. Like, there's guys in that. That's why I think Terrence Mann, I told Henry, watch out for Terrence Mann for the Clippers.
Yeah.
Just watch.
I thought of an example is the Lamar Odom story about when Lamar Odom wanted to kill Mark Cuban, roughly speaking.
I took a sip of water. Don't make me spit.
It was Vince Carter, right?
Yeah, right.
Vince
Amazing.
Carter's like,
Yeah.
Lamar Odom believes him, right? That's Vince Carter was not Vince Carter at that time, right? He was a role player on that. Not a role player, but you know what I mean.
No,
yeah.
It's a brilliant point, Henry. I have talked to players from overseas who were young enough to not really know who Vince Carter was.
Yeah.
One of my players was on his team in Dallas when they played the Magic, and they got there a couple of days early because it was warm weather in Orlando. And Vince had everyone over to his house. Now, my player didn't know that Vince Carter. He knew Vince Carter dunks. He didn't realize how much money the cat made. And he told me after, he was like, Coach, we went to Vince's house. He's like, it's not a house. It's not a mansion. It's this enormous resort with many, many families could live. He had never had any idea Vince had that kind of money. He's like, Vince was the most amazing host. He took care of everyone. And I said, yeah, that's why Vince is who he is and always will be. He's just magnetic. He was also the drum major for his high school band.
Yes, of course he was. That makes perfect sense.
Right.
Yeah.
His mom was a principal. That's why Lon Kruger left Florida. He couldn't sign him. He was the best recruit in Florida history because he was that guy. And he just, unlucky enough, went to a terrible franchise in Toronto for too damn long.
And I love that. Like, so your Vince Young story or Justin or this Vince thing, like you first of all, you love that guy. You want to fight and die, but also you're embarrassed if you're hungover that day, right?
Yeah,
or
right.
whatever. Like, you feel terrible because you're letting this guy down. Who cares so much?
Right. That's right. It's exactly. And so on the Clippers, that's why I say I've heard these stories about Terrence Mann. He's young. He's a second-year player. Maybe I'm wrong, and he doesn't play at all. But he's that kind of guy. The Magic got really screwed losing Jonathan Isaac, who was also that. I'm asking all these Florida State players. I don't mean to do that. These are really long, athletic people like Vince Carter. Yeah, they're all Florida guys. Vince Carter's a Daytona Beach. These are super long, athletic guys who just can't stop smiling.
Yeah.
Like, who doesn't love those guys, right? The athletic, active, hardworking guy that just always bringing joy. That's why Andre Iguodala worships Steph Curry publicly.
Yeah.
Like, the things Andre talked about Steph, you always think he was being ironical, like to be like a jerk about it. But no, Steph just, how do you not? He's the guy that went to Kevin Durant's house and Draymond's house, right? When they fought. Yeah. Curry drove, like, come on. Other guys aren't doing that. Pat Bev ain't doing that. Of course Curry did that, right? Of course he did that. That's what he does.
I'm going to give David one little shout out. David is on record as he thinks the Raptors will be good because he thinks Pascal Siakam in the bubble was an aberration and he'll be determined. And there's a Judy, if you might mind hitting that one last link. I just saw this article. I was like, man, Pascal Siakam saying this week what David said last week, which is a pretty good, this is pretty good.
Nice.
This is pretty good. So just
he said
let's just put a pin in this.
He said I didn't recognize myself. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize him either. The bubble fucked with a lot of people, including Paul George, which is what Paul should have said, which is, hey, I told you guys. It was fucking with my head. I think the Raptors, all those young guys, and Siakam can still get better. He's just got to shoot better. He's got to shoot mid-range better because he can get those shots off. Same as Brandon Ingram. Like, these are guys that are Kevin Durant lightish. Dirk Nowitzki lightish, that they can dribble the ball. You can't block their shot. So if they can just make those shots the way Dirk and Durant do it, because you're in your face, but he doesn't see you, he's way taller than you, then those guys suddenly become amazing end of possession scorers. And that elevates you. Think about it. you score better than the other teams on tough shots and a possession, you're going to win more games, period, you know?
We have opening night, guys. We got Celtics. Oh, we got Nets, Warriors, and we have the Battle of LA. Like, that's December 22nd.
Yeah, they did this for a reason, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like fight night in the NBA, wasn't it?
Adam's sitting in his office like, please, we got to get this out.
No COVID, no COVID, no COVID. Fight night coming.
All right, you guys. We've hit our
Safe all
magic
weekend,
end of the buzzer, whatever. I can't
Yeah.
talk.
Peace.
Okay, super great. Thank you, Jarod. Thank you, David. Thank you, Judy.
Peace.